Alrighty, so the first order of business is to get this pipeline added into our build process. So, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and nuke BuzzMMO base generated completely. So get rid of that. And then I'm going to go ahead and on BuzzMMO.base, I'm going to right click, select unload project. Wait a couple minutes, and then right click, say edit project. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scroll down all the way to the bottom here. And I'm going to go ahead and yank out this before build target. So, like the name implies, this target is invoked before the build. So it's the best place to put in code generation. Then I'm going to say exec command equals, and I'm going to pass in ms build this file directory, followed by // buzz mmo.tools /bin /configuration /buzz mmo.tools.exe. So that's the first part of our command here. The next part is going to be our arguments. So I'm going to pass in generate component -interfaces. Then I'm going to open up a quote here, but I'm going to use the XML entity quote. So that's going to be QUOT. With a termination right there. And I'm going to do ms build this file directory. And I'm going to say /components. Whoops, not inside of the parentheses. And then I'm going to terminate this with another XML entity quote. Then let's go ahead and pass in our component interface, which is the attribute we want to base our interfaces off of. And then I'm going to pass in the path to where I want this to be compiled, which is simply going to be generated /component interface.cs, or sorry, .g.cs. All right, so that's our command. You can take a look at it real fast. It should be correct. We'll find out in a moment. Before we run this, however, well, of course, obviously, we do need to right-click the project and say reload. Well, actually, just in case this is successful, I'm going to take this whole exec line and I'm going to copy it and paste it off to the side. You should do the same too, because we're going to be doing the same thing in our test projects. So I'm going to reload this. Now, the first order of business is I'm going to create a folder in here called generated. Our code will actually, the way it's written at the moment, it'll fail if the folder for where the output file is supposed to go to doesn't exist. Now let's right-click BuzzMMO.base and say build and see what happens. It says build succeeded. Let's go ahead and click on the Show All Files button in our Solution Explorer. And you'll notice that we don't actually get anything there. So it looks like we're having a bit of a slight issue here with our build step. So one of the ways that we can possibly diagnose this problem is by opening up our output log. And we could possibly see where BuzzMMO Tools is built. Okay, let's just go ahead and unload this project and reload it. Another way to, one of the things that I like to do is where'd our stuff go? Oh, did I do a Control-X instead of Control-C? I think that's what happened. Okay, let's add that back in. Now let's right-click base and say reload. Oh, come on. What am I doing wrong? Whoops, this needs to be inside of our before build. I might have done this on a wrong project. Wow, I don't know how I would manage to do that. If I did it on a wrong project, it might have been client that I did it on. So let me, because I definitely don't want this running in client, because that would be bad. No. Did I do it on console? Whatever. Doesn't matter. The point is that now this should work. So let's right click and hit build. And we get a build succeeded. Let's go ahead and click on our show all files. And indeed, inside of generated, we do have our component interfaces.g.cs. Now, what's very, very important is that we right click this and say include in project. Now, again, you wouldn't see that file unless you had show all files selected, but it has to be in the project for it to be compiled. Anyway, if we open this up, what's really cool is we don't see any compiler errors. So our code generated just fine. All right, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and do the same thing to our tests project. So I'm going to right-click tests, and I'm going to say unload. Right-click and select edit. And then I'm going to scroll down all the way to the bottom, grab my before build target. I'm going to nuke it from that comment so I don't forget that I've already defined my target. I'm going to paste in what I had before, but I'm going to change the parameters a little bit. I'm going to keep what we're calling because that's the same. However, what I'm going to do here is instead of saying /components, I'm just going to put a space. Now, you might be asking, why am I putting a space there between the msbuild this file directory variable and the end quote? Now, this is incredibly important. The reason it's incredibly important is msbuild this file directory has a leading slash. It happens to be of the / variety, which, as you know, is an escape character. Meaning, if we left this without a space here, it would be escaped. This quote would be escaped, and the parameters wouldn't be passed in properly. However, I do want to leave the quotes in because I'm referencing a file path, and since I'm referencing a file path, I want to be able to support file paths that have spaces in them. Next up for this, we want component interfaces, but we also want another one, because remember, we have our end-to-end test, and it has its own system test with its own component attribute. So what this is going to be is, I'm going to say comma isolated component. And then I'm going to go ahead and leave the output just the same, generated /component interface.g.cs. So let's go ahead and right-click reload. Now again, before I run it, I have to make sure to create the generated folder. Now I'm going to right-click tests and say build. Apparently it was successful, so I'm going to say show all files, and indeed we have component interface.g.cs. So we'll go ahead and right-click include into project, which again is vital. We open this up, and look at what we get. We get our test component 1 client, test component 2 server, and all that fun stuff. However, it looks like we do have an actual bug. Looks like I did not use the full name for the type of right here. So that's going to be problematic because these are actually nested classes. So we can fix this very easily by going into our build tools and opening up our proxy generator and our proxy code generator, scrolling down to the bottom and changing this guy, this 0th parameter, the first parameter, from component.name to component.fullname. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click buzzmmo.tools and hit build, and have that build successfully. Then I'm going to right-click buzzmmo.tests and hit build, have that built successfully. Then I'm going to jump into component interfaces, go all the way to the bottom, and indeed we now have a full reference to our interface here. So that's so that we can pass through the class that is contained within. Alrighty, so that's really about it. Now all that's left to do is we have to go in and we have to fix our client and we have to fix our server. Fixing the client and our server will automatically fix our tests because it's based off the same code. So what I'm going to do here is inside of base, I'm going to go into infrastructure and I'm going to create a new class here. And this class is simply going to be responsible for scanning all of the assemblies in our app domain, finding all of our factory registries, and registering all of them. So what I'm going to do here is, I don't know what I'm going to call this, component proxy factory. And the component proxy factory is going to be very, very simple. We're going to have a... in fact, you know what? I think I'm just going to make it static. I could make this not static, but I think for now I'm going to make it static. If I ever need to make it non-static, I can, I guess. So it's going to have a private static read-only dictionary of type... No, of type... Come on, ReSharper. You used to work very well with your code completion, but you've gotten a lot worse. Static proxy interceptor object, and we're going to call these factories. Then I'm going to create a static component proxy factory constructor. And we're going to say factories equals new dictionary of blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to say for each var assembly in app_domain.currentDomain.getAssemblies, for each var registry in assembly.getCustomAttributes, type of component proxy registry attribute, false to inherit, of type component proxy factory registry attribute, or words. And then we'll go ahead and do a for each on that. Let me go ahead and go full screen so you guys can see more of that. And then I'm going to say registry, or sorry, I'm going to say registry.registry type.get method register factories, which I'm going to verify is indeed the name of that method, so I don't run into issues. I'm just going to copy and paste that so I make sure I don't get any spelling issues. With binding flags of public and static. Invoke null for the, since it's a static method, we pass in null for the instance, and then new object array of factories. That's it. Now we can make a public object create mapped component, or public static object, mapped component iStatic proxy interceptor, return factories at component.type, passing in component and proxy interceptor to invoke it. And that's it. Our component proxy factory is practically done. Or should be done, unless there's a bug somewhere. Which we can go ahead and check right now if there is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over into our buzzmmo.client.systems. I'm going to locate client systems where we actually instantiate the proxy factory. And as you see right here, it's not going to work. What's going on here? Blah, 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 ambiguous reference. Generated component proxy factory or base. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? Yeah, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna change something. I messed up something. I'm gonna jump back here into my buzzmmo.tools proxy generator, proxy code generator, and actually no. So what are you talking about? Didn't I already get rid of the generated project? For some reason, this still exists somewhere. I think what's in call for is a good clean. So I'm going to come up here to build. I'm going to say clean solution, and then I'm going to say rebuild. Oh right, we have a catch-22, don't we? Because our tools, it can't compile it unless the tools exist. So what I'm going to do there, or with that, is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to edit this. I'm just going to come down here. I'm going to say exec, and then I'm going to, or exec, I'm going to say condition on the exec, and I'm going to say exists, and then I'm going to pass in a reference to this exe. So I'm just going to paste that in there. Which means the generated code will not be regenerated in the case of a clean and a rebuild, but that's okay. That just means we have to rebuild it once and then rebuild it, or then build it again. We're still running into an issue here. Now, for some reason, it's still having a problem with the thinking that the old generated code is still around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up its references here and see that it is still referencing buzzmmo.generated. So I'm just going to nuke that out. And I'm also going to do the same thing on anywhere else that might be. For example, on client Unity. Should be on server too. And it should be on tests. Or not. Okay. Now let's try to build this for reals. Okay, build succeeded. Let's make sure that it's still generating things, though. So I'm going to come up here to generated, and I'm just going to nuke this entire file and hit F6. And I will see that it did indeed regenerate. So that is good. That means that all of our code should now compile. And because all our code is compiling, we can now test it. So let's hop on over to our isolated system tests, and let's run these guys. See, previously they weren't working, and now they should be. Whoops. And they are. Awesome. So the last thing I want to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I have Photon already running. I'm going to open up Unity to our client. Wait an hour for it to load. Because we did just delete a project, I am going to go ahead and open up my assemblies folder inside of Unity and just delete all of these assemblies. Then I'm going to hop back here and do an F6, jump back to Unity, and we have now just the assemblies that we need, which is what we want. Now let's hit play. Oh, be sure, yeah, we are. We're getting communication to and from the server. Awesome. Now, before you commit your project, the last thing that you're going to want to do is going to be... Oh, where are you? I always forget where that is. Is going to be jumping in here, jumping into source, and grabbing your base.generated file project and just nuking it. And that's it. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed learning just a little bit about Roslyn, I guess. I know it was a little rushed as far as looking at Roslyn, but just know that that's really, if you're wanting to do just some really simple C# code analysis, you can just by using the simple C# syntax walker. There's a whole lot more Roslyn can do, and this is just one of the simplest things it can do. It happens to be, though, one of the easiest and fastest ways to go about parsing C# code. But now that we have this all set up, there's only a few instances I can think of in my mind that this will fail, and I have solutions already in place, or in my mind, to implement, but I just don't want to worry about that right now because it's very, very unlikely that they're going to happen. So at this point, I would consider our proxy generation finished. It works both in our client, our server, and also in our tests. So I think that pretty much wraps this up, and we'll see you guys in the next video.